All right, let's get started here. Mike Ritzema with i3 Business Solutions, and Brian and Pat I'll introduce in a minute, but this is the webinar on, if you can go back, Brian, shield your business from emerging cybersecurity threats, and specifically business email compromise, known as BEC, or SaaS, software as a service. All the stuff we're doing in the cloud, how do we protect it? And it is the number one challenge we're seeing today. Our presenters are Brian Abraham and Pat Sullivan. Brian, the CTO at i3 Business Solutions, 25 years in technology, right in the grit and grind of it, and helping build out our cybersecurity program here at i3 Business Solutions. And Pat Sullivan with SaaS Alerts, 10 years of cybersecurity and technology experience. He's a subject matter expert. I think you'll learn that in a moment. But let's spend a minute and talk about the cybersecurity journey that we're all on. And at i3, we have two frameworks we work from, and certainly the National Institute of Standards and Technology from the U.S. Department of Commerce is the foundation, and we implement it through the Center for Internet Security's framework version 8. And what happens with cybersecurity, Brian, the next slide, is it gets kind of complex. I mean, the NIST framework of identify, protect, detect, respond, recover is 5 different areas that we have to manage. They added a 6th, governance. And so then we go to the next slide, and it gets more complex when you apply that against devices, applications, networks, data, users. Now we're up to 25 different domains, but it gets more complex than that. The NIST and CIS version 8 put 18 controls in place. And so, yeah, get up tomorrow morning in your small business and work through these, because there's 153 safeguards in those controls. And that's what we try to do here at i3, is look at the challenges in protecting our small business and yours, and what is the next priority. And we've identified business email compromise, software as a service, SaaS compromise as the high priority. I'll turn it over to Pat, who will get into a little bit of the challenge here.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the time. So we have seen such a rise in attacks on SaaS applications, or those cloud apps that everybody has moved to. And the big question is why, right? And why the increase? And the answer is pretty simple, and it really boils down to the user versus the actual perimeter. And what I mean by perimeter is that infrastructure that you normally log into, right? The firewalls, the switches, the routers, all the gear that's housing your computers at the office. Now, especially with COVID, we've understood that that has changed. People don't necessarily always work from the office exclusively. You are logging in from any device at any time from anywhere. So that perimeter has really shifted from being that office infrastructure to really your browser is the new perimeter, right? Or the user identity. And so trying to protect every piece of hardware that you folks are going to log in from is a bit maddening, but it's also not scalable, and it's not an efficient way to do so. So here at SaaS Alerts, we help add some efficiencies and automation around helping stop these types of attacks. And you'll see here the numbers are on the screen, right? Some of the facts, and these are facts. It's certainly not conjecture. We know now that over 60% of breaches are identity driven. We know that 82% of breaches involve some sort of cloud or SaaS applications, right? So they're attacking those cloud apps versus that infrastructure play. We know that there were over 21,000 reports of business email compromise in 2023 alone. And that translates to $2.9 billion lost. And it's shocking when you think of, normally you think of ransomware as being the big bad wolf and the one that is really doing all the havoc. And what we're quickly seeing here is that hackers have pivoted away from ransomware. Yes, that is still a thing. And yes, it's still a threat out there. But there was about $30 million reported lost last year in ransomware, as opposed to $2.9 billion lost on the business email compromise. And again, it goes right back to my previous slide. Why is this? It's because it's easier to attack the user and get you folks to click that link or to steal your token versus it is trying to get in through that hard infrastructure that us as IT professionals have spent the last 10 years trying to protect. Next slide. So this boils right down into what's Microsoft response. And in their terms of use last year, they added in these key sentences here, and you'll see it in bold below. The fact that if someone else breaches or gains access to your account, you could be held liable for losses incurred by Microsoft or another party. So now the onus is on you. And rather than Microsoft securing their application, they hide behind legalese and they put the onus back on you and your service provider. So the proof's in the pudding here that Microsoft will not be held responsible if there is any sort of breach. And a great example of this is, stories I think speak volumes and can really tell the full story. If you're familiar with Cozy Bear, the Russian attack group that claims responsibility for the attack on SolarWinds and the attack on Microsoft. Just in November of 2023, they claimed to have thwarted in and they got into Microsoft's own infrastructure. And they did so, and we'll share this link out so you can read it, but they did so by using these stale accounts or these guest accounts, the accounts that were no longer managed or looked at by humans. And so that was one of the first features that we put into SaaS Alerts, was to help identify these stale accounts and just shut them down. So it's very concerning to think that even Microsoft is getting thwarted and missing some of the obvious things that SaaS Alerts is picking up as table stakes. Next slide. So what you do not know can hurt you. And this is that whole piece of helping our service providers win on transition. We know you as users are moving away from that traditional office, logging in from anywhere. So if they don't have eyes into your environment or where you're logging in from, their hands are tied. So adding a piece of software like SaaS Alerts can, again, really help with that rapid response and letting everybody know exactly who's logging in and from what device. And lastly, size doesn't matter. You would think that, okay, I'm a small target. The hackers, why would they want to go after me? I've got $20,000 in the bank. They should actually focus on, the Staples of the world or these large enterprise companies or the healthcare providers that we see time and time again. But they're preying on this, and they understand that small businesses typically don't have the IT budget. They know that you're typically lax on security and that you don't think you're a target. Right? So if they can go in very quickly, get somebody to click a link or guess your username and password and get in themselves, or simply steal your token during one of your sessions. If they're able to do that, they know it's a much quicker path to profitability and getting that $20,000 in your bank account versus trying to spend 6 or 8 months trying to attack, again, those big enterprises that have that budget, unlimited budget for IT, and all of those threat analysts watching their networks.
Exactly, Pat. I love that. And, the days of going after a $250 credit card charge for these groups are moving on. I mean, picture an office of 100 people in Russia or China, and they're basically going after $50,000 to $100,000 from millions of businesses in the United States. And if they can find the one that's not well protected, they ring the bell and celebrate. We just got $50,000. Not 250. And no, like you said, they're not going after those enterprise accounts with 50 people in their cybersecurity division. They're going where the easy money is.
Right. And Mike, before we move on, I mean, you said it, right? And it's usually what we see, the users that are getting attacked are on the About Us page. They're usually some sort of, public figure for the company or the accountant or bookkeeper. We see them getting attacked a lot, right? So they can really quickly reverse engineer their way back into the environment. They know most businesses use first initial, last name @domain. Or first, it takes just a few tries to understand they've got the username right. And then it's just password spray. And they've got these library attacks where they can rip through those. So if you don't have something as easy as two-factor built into your system, that's an easy way in, and it's easy money for the hackers.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the other thing that we've seen is even if somebody breaks into an account and they haven't breached a valuable target, maybe it's the intern that just got hired, they'll use that account to send an email inside the organization to somebody that is a valuable target with a malicious attachment, so they can then breach that account and continue. So the cost of a breach. And really, it doesn't have to be a breach. It can be any type of incident just getting into the email. So anything is going to cause a business interruption. Once an event like this happens, everything stops. You have to start the investigation, figure out what happened and what the impacts of that is, what your potential losses are. Legal issues. So in business email compromise, one of you or one of your business partners has probably lost money, and there's going to be finger pointing going on as to who's responsible for that loss. Financial losses are implicit. Pat covered that. The numbers are staggering and continue to go up. Regulatory involvement. So some of the logging and audit trails are now being required either through compliance measures or compliance regulation, or even cybersecurity insurance. So to be eligible for cybersecurity insurance, you need to have certain protections and logging in place. HR implications and public relation crisis. So that's not the kind of publicity that you want to have for your organization, is saying that you had a breach and lost your data.
Yeah, Brian, the reputational damage, the public relations, or even the legal issues. I mean, you're working on a case right now where a company came to us with some finger pointing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So classic business email compromise. There was financial fraud involved. Somebody sent a payment to the bad guys, and now you have a company that didn't get paid and a company that lost money, and they're both pointing fingers trying to figure out whose fault it is.
Yep.
So, what can we do to address this? So at i3, we launched a new platform in alliance with SaaS Alerts this past year, really launched it this year, to really get visibility into those SaaS applications. So see what's happening, who's logging in, what users are logging in, where they're logging in from, and if there's suspicious activity. So did they just log in from Detroit and simultaneously log in from China? Have they downloaded an unusual amount of data? Is somebody trying to attack the account? So all of that visibility into SaaS applications, in addition to being able to automatically lock down those applications. So one of the common configurations that we have is if you have what's known as impossible travel. So you just logged in Michigan, you simultaneously logged in a foreign country. That probably is not legitimate. We can lock out the account, contact the user, and see what happened. We actually just had an incident of this a couple of days ago. It was the owner of a company. We got an alert that they had suspicious logins, and it was fairly obvious that it was a breached account. Locked it out, contacted the user. They had no idea, nothing had happened yet. But when that happens, the bad guys are going to break in. They're going to sit there and they're going to wait and watch for an opportunity. And it's usually going to be when a financial transaction is taking place, or they figure out if the individual is valuable enough to start a fraud. So one of the valuable things that you can gather from the platform is unauthorized login attempts. So you can see who's trying to log into your SaaS applications, from where, and what's failed, or if MFA's failed. So one of the things we watch for is MFA fatigue. And Pat, I think, did you have a story about MFA fatigue, or was that, it might have been, I don't know if it was you or someone else, but somebody said they just caught one from multiple login attempts, a good password, but failed MFA, right? So that's a classic case of somebody had their password breached MFA was fortunately still protecting them, but eventually with MFA fatigue, the user's just going to hit approve, figuring there's a problem with the application. So with these unauthorized login attempts, what you can do is you can see who's being targeted inside your organization. So is it your CEO? Is it your accounts payable person? You good visibility to know who's being targeted, and you can educate those individuals on what to watch for. And you can put additional protections on their account also if you know you have highly targeted individuals. One of the other features is reporting on file sharing. So specifically out of like your Office 365 platform, everybody's in OneDrive now, everybody's in SharePoint now. And this gives you visibility into who's sharing what data outside your organization. And if it's been shared anonymously, or if it's been shared inaccurately. So some of the things we've caught in this is financial data that an individual in a company shared out anonymously to a large group of people. So that was an accident on their part. You normally don't have any type of visibility into that without a reporting platform.
Hey, Brian, I have a really good story to go along with that happened to another service provider of ours. And it was so big, it actually got picked up by the FBI. We helped stop, it was essentially a Chinese spy ring. There was a company out of the Midwest, I think it was like a packaging company, and they had somebody on their manufacturing floor that was sending over sensitive information to the mainland in China. They were sending it over to a person over there via SharePoint. And once the person got it, they would delete and try to cover up their tracks. And SaaS Alerts picked that up within minutes. We, told the authorities, and now it's in the hands of the FBI. And it was a major, major deal. And that's stuff that Microsoft is not picking up by nature or by default. So just having protection or just using the things within Microsoft themselves it just doesn't cut it these days. And that was a major, major incident.
Yeah, one of the things that we found when you're doing an investigation like that is using the kind of native Microsoft tools. It would take our technicians hours of digging and parsing through logs and assembling different types of logs. Whereas with this platform, we can very clearly see who logged in from where, what was downloaded to where, and all the access around that. Foreign applications. So with your SaaS identity platforms like Office 365, Entra ID, you can integrate multiple applications to authenticate with those. So with this reporting, you can see what applications are being integrated and accessed through those platforms. Stale account cleanup. Yeah, so Pat touched on this. Microsoft had an incident through a stale account with the Cozy Bear incident. But what this does is it will give you a report of what accounts in your system have not been used, have not been logged into in a period of time. And also stale links. So if somebody is creating and sending out, sharing data, you can automatically expire those after a preset amount of time. Chances are if somebody shared out, some link anonymously, it doesn't need to be there forever. So you can shut that down after a period of time.
Brian, I would like to add too, most folks don't realize, but if you share out a document and someone does not have Microsoft licensing, Microsoft will create them as a guest user in your tenant. And that's pretty blind to most folks until you actually see the data. So you don't know what you don't know. And SaaS Alerts helps expose, here are all the people that have access to your environment now, whether they're a guest or a real user. And in many cases, we can help point out those stale or orphaned accounts. So you might not have let the service provider know that 3 or 4 people gave their notice or that you just had a layoff. So you might be burning Microsoft licenses. So this can actually help get some money back in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. And so beyond Office 365, which we've spent a lot of time on, you can also integrate with kind of the top SaaS applications that most companies are using. And Pat, you were saying that, if there's other ones, you have other capabilities to do API integrations also.
Absolutely. Yep. So I would be interested to hear of other cloud applications that you folks on the webinar are using today. we can easily get those added and give you protection around that. And I will note too, this tool also helps stop we've talked about external bad actors. What about the internal employee? What about the person that gave their 2-week notice or might be leaving, but they don't leave the right way? And SaaS alerts, because we keep these logs for a year, you're able, or your service provider, i3, they're able to go back and look and say, this is exactly when the suspicious activity started. And great example, last week, we had a prospect call us and they said, I'm a service provider. I'm in Florida. I have it was like a lumber yard or something. And we feel like there's an employee there that's up to no good. And he works from home. It's a really hard time for us to figure out and parse through the Microsoft logs of what he's doing. They plugged in SaaS alerts, we let it run, and lo and behold, he was out there sharing password documents out with the name passwords, customer list, 2025 roadmap. These were clearly things that he should not have been sharing out or downloading, and proofs in the pudding. So sometimes you can stop those internal employees doing something that, if maybe they're disgruntled or they're just not leaving the right way. So we can help track that too.
Yeah, and you touched on a great point, Pat. The logging retention, right? So being able to keep a year's worth of logs, whereas with most of that data, with the licensing that 90% of America has, you're only keeping about 30 days worth of Microsoft logs, and that's when you're going back to figure out what happened. That's not enough. All right, Mike.
All right, thanks, guys. And I maintain that the number one responsibility for any business owner, and I am a business owner, is risk management. And we talk about risk, we talk about physical, financial, and technological. And physical risk, let's make sure we lock the doors and that stuff is not walking out the back door. Financial risk, let's make sure, number one, we've got good cash flow, we're paying the bills. But number two, money's not going out the back door. And then technological risk. So when we talk about business controls, or we talk about technology controls, 18 different areas, I say two-factor, two-person authentication is part of that. We have an actual client who has two-person authentication in place in their finance department, but they were moving fast, and they're paying bills, they're getting stuff done. And one person shouted to the other and said, hey, I got a change for routing number and ACH. You okay with that? Yeah, go ahead. And $80,000 went to the wrong account. So we want two-person authentication and a little more thorough than that. So two-factor authentication, that 6-digit code that's either text or coming from your authenticator app for technology, yes, please. And two-person authentication for any changes to payroll or vendors or client ACH type accounts. We're going to have two people inside the company confirm these things. And then we're not going to call the phone number in the text or the email. We're not going to click on the website. No, we're going to go to our known CRM or information and confirm this via a phone call. Two-person authentication, please, is what I recommend, not only in technology, but on the financial side of the house. Now, secondly, I recommend that you do a cybersecurity assessment. And there's different ways you may be able to do it in-house, but we can also do it. We're willing to do this complimentary for you. Call us up and we will help you with this, especially on Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. Start there with your email platform, expand from there. And then I call it ADR, alerting, detection, and response. Watch for this stuff somehow. And like the guy said, yes, there are tools inside Microsoft 365. They're very expensive. They can be turned on, but then you need to watch it every day, every day, every day. And so find your way to manage this. Oops, somebody just logged in from China. We need to shut that down now. Certainly, automating that is what we're talking about here. So I just implore you, as you manage the business risk, and if you're a technology person in your organization, I believe it's your responsibility to talk to the owner, talk to the executive team, and recommend these improvements, this risk management to them. And as we wrap up here, we have a few more minutes. Any other stories or comments from you guys before I make my final comments? I will say that we had a new client come on board, Brian. As we were onboarding them, they were on a different email platform, and they were that close to moving $3 million. You got in the middle of that one, and we accelerated the implementation of the security for their email platform, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when we first rolled this out, I mean, we were finding compromises left and right that we had no visibility into before. And the most beautiful part is when it detects and shuts down an incident in real time in the middle of the night on the weekend when, you know, a technician's not in front of it. That's kind of the beauty of the capability of the platform.
And I would just add, you know, just stay diligent, right? You guys are as much a part of the process as anybody in the organization, and those bad actors are relying heavily that you as the user is going to do something that, you know, will let them in. So if you see something, say something, right? If it looks suspicious, it might be, you know, don't ever click the link within the email, go to the website itself. You'll get the same information, or at least verify the person that sent it that, hey, that is an okay link to click. And the hackers are getting so much better now with AI. They're not making as many spelling mistakes. It's not always that prints out in Nigeria, right? It's your guy in payroll that couldn't make it to the store and he needs the gift cards right away. And they're getting really, really good at that. So just always have your guard up and just check and verify. And MFA stops 99% of these guys still. It's the 1%ers that are now getting in, and that, you know, that percentage is growing by the day.
Yeah, beautiful, Pat. That's what I say. Technology marches on. I mean, it's a challenge. And when do we seize the opportunity of new technology? Each of us might have an acquaintance that's still using a flip phone. That's okay for them. But in business, when do I implement that new technology? And AI is real. Copilot, ChatGPT is real. It's improving companies, and the bad actors are using it. They're getting faster, smarter, quicker. So this is the challenge of technology. So managing business risk is our challenge to you. There's different ways to do it. We can help. You can call me, email me. You can track us down on the web. But we're here to help i3 Business Solutions. Brian, Pat, thanks for your time. And this will wrap our event.